This is going to sound kind of contrary to my own efforts, but I don't think we have to convince anyone of anything anymore. I don't think we really need to fight the critics. I think we've gotten too big for that to even be necessary, except as sport. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss the immense size of Cardano's Ghost Horde, Balaji settling his $1 million crypto bet, a former SEC chair on why the current SEC is wrong, and Coinbase already opening up offshore. If you feel like it wouldn't hurt a couple of these ghosts if they would dry clean their outfits every now and then, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Guys, we are no longer an upstart blockchain. We are not the little brother ecosystem. We're not a bunch of rebels on the outside trying to fight our way into the inner circle of crypto. We're actually gigantic. Cardano as an ecosystem is a gigantic ecosystem. It's a gigantic community, a gigantic network. Look at these numbers from April. Transactions grew by 1.5 million transactions. We're doing a 1.5 million new transactions in 1 month for a total number of transactions at 65.4 million. Think about that for a second. This little Cardano ecosystem that we sort of quaintly imagine as just being, like a handful of people who are sort of active on Cardano Twitter, it's actually this gigantic, massive network where we've done over 65 million transactions. This is not the kind of thing that dies overnight or sort of fades quietly into the night because of lack of attention or lack of use. There's a huge amount of use of the Cardano network going on. And you can argue about what kinds of transactions these are and, how many of them are automated or whatever way you'd like to dismiss, some number of the transactions on the network. But the truth of the matter is a huge volume of value is being pushed back and forth between people and entities and organizations. And people are using this network. This is a big network with a huge number of people using it. We're not this little tiny, newcomer to the crypto scene. Cardano's been around for a while. We're one of the gigantic top 10 blockchain ecosystems. There are a whole lot of ecosystems just like ours. There are thousands, but there are only 10. There are only 10 assets in the top 10, and we're the number 5 blockchain in all of crypto. I know it's super fun to fight the maximalists of other blockchain ecosystems, especially Ethereum, and I will always support it as sport, as recreation. I will never tell people not to fight other crypto people over the value and validity of Cardano because I know it's super fun. I know it's super fun and it's super funny for the rest of us to watch from the sidelines, but beyond the sporting recreational aspect, I don't think it's really that necessary anymore. I don't think we need to convince anybody in crypto that Cardano is a valuable and valid blockchain ecosystem. We've done over 65 million transactions. This is gigantic. If we were some kind of a startup corporation, that had been around for the same number of years as Cardano, and we'd had 65 million transactions by actual real consumers and companies and organizations, that would be a hallmark of phenomenal success. We would be phenomenally successful. Sure, you can always name, larger corporations that have done more transactions. You can talk about the number of daily users of platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Google, whatever you want. Of course, there are bigger networks and entities and companies, but 65 million is pretty huge. As long as we're not talking about the very largest tech platforms in the world, any kind of company where real people and organizations and companies have done 65 million transactions. That's a phenomenally successful network. So, why does it not feel like perfect success sometimes, especially lately? It's because we're still kind of in the middle of crypto winter. We're still like a year out from the Bitcoin halving. And no matter what anybody says, most of crypto still seems to be very correlated to that Bitcoin halving cycle. And we're in that period before the halving. We're in that period when the halving hasn't happened yet. This isn't the part of the cycle when things go crazy. And we've also still got that whole misguided White House with their boot on our throat thing going on. And listen, before anybody says it, I know some of you are out there saying, Visa does that many transactions in like 1 second. I know Visa is very gigantic, but Visa's also been around for over 6 decades. Visa was founded in 1958. Cardano's been around like a half decade. We now have the follow-up to Balaji's $1 million crypto bet. So first off, I know a lot of you think it's ridiculous that he would spend a million, apparently ended up being $1.5 million on this ridiculous bet. But if you think about it, it's not really that ridiculous. Guys with as much money as him probably don't hesitate to drop $1 million, $1.5 million on a house or a condo or something for like various and, plentiful mistresses. So instead of doing that, or, some kind of hypercar or something, but instead of doing that, Balaji did something interesting for all of crypto. And I appreciate it. I appreciate what he did. He could have easily blown this on the kind of stuff that guys like him blow their money on. Instead, he did something interesting. And I think it's something he really believes in. I think he really believes it is worth sending this public message, showing and proving how seriously he believes in what he's saying, how much conviction he has in this message he's trying to send. So where did the $1.5 million go? So it looks like $500,000 went to the guy he made the bet with, $500,000 went to give directly, and $500,000 went to Bitcoin Core. So, and it actually, I guess, wasn't quite time for the bet to be settled, but he decided to settle it early just to get it out of the way and to get his message out there, get sort of like the proof of his conviction out there while he again delivers the same message. So it's kind of interesting. If we go to the video, he laid out this nice almost 10-minute video where he once again is sort of laying out the case that the fiat world, in his view, is in for some destruction. There's going to be mass carnage in the fiat world, according to Balaji. And I think he really does believe this. I don't think this is him trying to get attention. I think he really believes this, and he wants to put people on notice. He wants the public to, as many people in the public to be aware as possible, to be aware that there might be trouble coming, and there is a life raft, and that life raft is crypto. I know he only talks about Bitcoin, but I'm just going to substitute the word crypto for Bitcoin here. So if we go directly into his video, he makes some good points. And you can tell Balaji puts a lot of effort into these videos because they're always kind of structured, and he has interesting ways of presenting his evidence. So he points out it was only 2 days from Silicon Valley Bank crisis to the printing of $1/3 trillion. It was only 2 weeks for $500 billion to flee all of these banks. It was only 2 months from, this event. I think I get flagged on YouTube still if I talk about this, but this event with the person who was person zero in the medical thing that happened, 2 months from then to lockdown. And maybe most interestingly, he points out that it was only 2 quarters from Ben Bernanke telling us that we were in for a mild recession to the great financial crisis. And then he goes on to sort of explain what he thinks might happen. And he does that by way of showing you a whole bunch of stats, how things are out of the ordinary. He says markets estimate record probability of default. And then he goes through a bunch of other articles and metrics. And it's a pretty persuasive case. If you're interested in the macro goings on right now, then you should watch this video. He lays out plenty of evidence that maybe, it's not like some kind of ironclad case that something terrible is going to happen or that fiat is going to collapse, but he has some interesting points, and there are a lot of interesting things that have happened that don't exactly paint a super cheery macroeconomic picture or a picture for the sustainability of the current fiat system we've got. Balaji obviously has very high conviction that bad things are going to happen. So the next question is, when are they going to happen? And he tells us he doesn't have a crystal ball. He doesn't know exactly when, but he would guess, he would peg the probabilities as looking something like this: a 10% chance that basically the whole fiat system maybe collapses in months, a 70% chance this happens in years, a 19% chance happens in decades, and a 1% chance this happens in centuries. I think if you think about, sort of like the grand arc of history, you'd probably agree with, a little bit of what this chart says. He's saying here that even the establishment would probably agree that the whole thing collapses within centuries. That's like 100% of the establishment would say this all collapses in centuries, and they would say 0% chance it happens on any of these timescales before that, decades, years, or months. Balaji, of course, pegs the percentage probabilities like this, and he's like, hey, you've got to decide for yourself what you think this looks like. Do you think there's, more than a 50% chance that the whole fiat system collapses within years? Do you think it's a 50% chance it collapses within decades, centuries? You probably don't care about. But he does lay out a pretty persuasive case that maybe we should all consider that maybe this fiat thing, this printing, this crazy amount of printing and debt taking that's going on right now, maybe this isn't sustainable beyond any kind of timescale that doesn't look like months and years and starts looking more like decades and centuries. A lot of us might have missed this news, but I think it's important to remember that what's going on, at least in the US right now, isn't really about crypto versus the establishment. It's about crypto versus this establishment. Here's an interesting thread. It's about former SEC chair Arthur Levitt. Arthur Levitt, in the same position that Gary Gensler is in now. He was once in that position. He's now in his 90s. But Arthur Levitt, last fall, and this is the part you might have missed, he penned an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal laying out a framework for responsible crypto regulation. And remember, this is a former SEC chair who's in his 90s. And he says things like this: no matter what regulators do, they shouldn't stifle the innovation that is at the heart of this market. Blockchain is the first technology that enables two parties to transact without a centralized intermediary, such as an exchange, broker, or bank. The implications are profound. Blockchain technologies have significant potential to increase transparency, reduce risk in capital markets, and democratize finance. The settlement and counterparty risk concerns that emerged in the 2008 financial crisis might not have been an issue if blockchain had been widely used. This probably couldn't have been better said by one of us who are currently inside crypto. But this is a former SEC chair saying this. I think this just goes to show crypto is not a young person thing. You could be any age and completely understand what crypto is all about. You could even be a former SEC chair. I don't think crypto's enemy is really government or regulators. It's just this government and these regulators. If you're curious about which bank is next on financial death row, here's some speculation that would possibly be PacWest. Finally, if you thought all these crypto companies were just bluffing about offshoring their operations outside of the US, you should be aware Coinbase, who said they were going to move their perpetual futures platform outside the US, has already launched that perpetual futures platform outside the US, only for institutional clients outside the US. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.